And now I am very happy to introduce my next guests who are here with me in person, Carrie Nutter and Joe Krupnick. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having us, Jodie.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Before you even formed this chapter of Animal Save, you both were going to basically slaughter trucks to provide water, occasionally food, love, and peace to animals bound for slaughter, right?
Correct.
That's right. Yeah.
I had originally participated in the past with various different groups in Chicago when they were actually going to the trucks, and this was before the pandemic. And so I had some experience with it, and it is a very sad experience, but I do have to say it's very powerful. When you're there, it's very emotional. I cried the whole time the first time I went. I still cry every time I go there. But even though it's one of the saddest things I've ever seen in my life, it's empowering because we're there for the animals.
Yeah.
And that's the principle behind the Save movement, is really to be there for the animals. There's a lot of different ways that one can show advocacy, and they're all important in their own way. And we truly feel like individuals learn in different ways and are more receptive to different types of advocacy. So not one is the end all be all.
Exactly.
That's pretty much how we feel. So we try different things. But I feel like the vigils are just really important. You actually get to bear witness to the suffering and bring comfort to animals in their last moments. Some of the animals feel compassion for the first time in their lives because the conditions they come from are just so sad.
Yeah.
And that's why we keep going back.
Thank you. I mean, this is a form of advocacy I've never done. I don't think I can do it. Just watch. Carrie sent me a lot of photos from your vigils. And Joe, why don't you tell us, what happens when you go to these vigils for the animals?
Well, you go to these vigils and the first thing you see is we're there at about 3:30 in the morning. We usually arrive between 3:30 and 3:45. And usually the slaughter truck is already there. And usually, we've done this now, I think, 9 or 10 times in the last few months. And Carrie and I get our water out of the trunk. We grab some watermelons. We brace ourselves. We say a few, comforting words to each other. And then we walk up to the trucks. And usually you can hear the sound even before we walk into the truck area, the loading area. You can hear the sound of the pigs screaming or the goats. And, ultimately, I mean, our feeling about it, I think, the first time I went, I cried more than I've cried since my father died 25 years ago. And I mean, what could be more important really than, being there for a sentient being at their very most vulnerable? Who could be more vulnerable than a voiceless animal in the moments or even the hours before they die? And one of the criticisms of this, I think we spent a lot of time reflecting on what we were doing before we did for the first time, before we kind of braced ourselves, prepared ourselves for it, is why do this? Why help sheep or pigs or goats, given that they're going to die anyway, right? Why help them in those moments, like right before they're going to get slaughtered, because they're going to be, it's just a matter of minutes sometimes. And this argument, I'd point out, first of all, that we're all going to die anyway, right? So why should compassion have any less value in these moments before death? And I think there are different ways of looking at these vigils, but if our task, as I think we take it to be, is to reduce a little bit of suffering, even if only a little bit in these moments, then our goal in these moments, when they await their deaths, is to say that we're to do something, right? To give them something, to give them water, to give them food, to give them physical comfort, to give them love. And that really is real and good. And we're saying essentially to these pigs, sheep, and goats who've suffered the horrors of factory farming, horrors that are unimaginable. They've suffered horrors their entire lives that are unimaginable, I think, to any human, to any of us. That we see you, you matter, each of you. And we know that you don't want to die any more than any of us do.
Right.
And for these animals, it's the first time, as Carrie said, it's the first time for some of them that anyone has showed them, love.
I think that's a real important point to make is the old McDonald's farm, the happy family farm, that really isn't real. Are there some family farms out there? Probably, yeah, sure. But the majority of meat, of dead animals that you are eating from the grocery stores, from fast food, from restaurants, are animals that were born into a world of horrors in a factory farm. Mm-hmm. They weren't given one day of kindness, one moment of kindness. So what you guys are doing is even making eye contact with them, you're showing them that you're there for them. And I am so sorry, but this is one of the hardest things.
It just means you have a heart. It means you care. And
yeah, exactly.
I don't think one should ever feel sorry for that. I feel like if we all did something just a little bit for stuff that we really feel passionate about, the world would be such a better place. And that's one of the mottos that I try to live by.
Yeah, if you see these pictures, go to my Facebook page, go to Chicago Alliance for Animals, and look at their eyes. And then ask yourself, is that burger, is that steak, is that lamb chop? For a few minutes of taste, worth it when you can, choose a kind diet that doesn't involve their suffering. It's the only way, people, to stop it is by you making that choice. So,
right, you make your choice with your money and what choices that you make, and industries, they listen to that sometimes when they won't listen to the words. Sometimes that's actually the bottom line.
Oh, it always is. The money,
right.
The dollar, the buck stops here.
Right.
So,
I just wanted to say another thing too, that we all can do something, and I feel like everybody's on a different trajectory, and one person's path is not going to necessarily be the same as another's, and we all have unique gifts to give to this and whatever cause you believe in. And when you look at it as a whole, it might seem overwhelming, but when you break it down into small steps, it might be a little more manageable, just like everything. And we all start somewhere, right? Just to give you my personal experience, I grew up in a family and we loved animals, and our companion animals were treated well, but we were eating meat. I mean, like a lot of families, traditional American meal.
Yeah.
Meat, potato, vegetable. That's pretty much
me too.
What I had when I was growing up.
Sure.
And then flash forward to New Year's 1993, actually the end of 1992, I was just reading some literature, and it was just really sad about how animals were treated in the food industries. And it made me so sad. And it was right around the time when I was thinking of making a New Year's resolution, and I really wanted to make one that I felt like I would believe in and really stick with. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I decided to become vegetarian. So when the clock struck 12, in 1993, that's when I became a vegetarian. And then flash forward 15 years later, 2008, my husband and I were taking a road trip to upstate New York, and we visited a farm sanctuary up there. And before we even visited it, when we were contemplating going there, I said, this is it. I just need a good starting point. I want to meet these animals and be a vegan. So that's just my personal story. I think there's a lot of different stories. Everybody you talk to will have different, types of impetus and how they, basically did get there. But I just wanted to point out, even if that's not something that you immediately are interested in doing, you can still help these animals, even if you're consuming them, even though we ultimately would like you not to consume them. Even if you are, there's ways you can help them. If you don't like how they're treated on these trucks or at these huge factory farms, there's still things that you can do. And if you don't feel like you could be physically present in trucks, you could, do things like petitions or write letters or donate money if you don't have a lot of time, or if you do have time and, maybe your budget's a little tight. Attend a peaceful protest. Give it a chance. Just see how it feels to you.
And what you're saying is so true, is not every form of advocacy works for everybody. That's what makes it really powerful is that we have people who are doing what you do. We have people who do advocacy like I do. We have people who do hands-on rescue, which I can't do rescue because I have a tiny place. I don't have a lot of money, and I always fail. I keep them. I can't put them back outside or
That
give
would
them.
be me.
You know, I'm a foster failure. So those who do hands-on rescue, those who do your vigils, everybody has. You know, I know what is best for me, and that's advocacy and communicating with legislators and urging them to do the right thing. And then, there is a way you can help it. In a lot of it doesn't take a lot of time. You give an hour a week if you can, or a half hour a week. But there's something you can do. And the other thing is we're talking about trying to keep animals off your plate. Don't think that if this is something you're considering or you're listening to, it's not something you have to do overnight. I didn't do it. I mean, I made the decision pretty quickly, but did it happen? No. I cheated a little bit, and until you get all the way there, it takes some time. Some people probably can do it quickly. I wasn't able to, but so it's kind of like smoking or drinking. If there's something you want to give up, and you are making that effort, and one night you have a drink, you can't just say, okay, I'm had a drink, I'm throwing away my whole goal. You just go back and try again, and it's nobody's perfect. So. I want to give our number out again, 773-763-9278, if you want to call in and talk to Carrie and Joe and I about this very important issue. So where specifically do you typically go to help the animals?
We go to a slaughterhouse called Park Packing, and there's another one called Halstead Packing, and Park Packing is a small, kind of butcher shop, and it's a little bit of a drive, but they do bring animals in every day, at least every weekday, and so.
What area is it in the city of Chicago?
Yeah, it's in the city.
South side or west side? You don't have to give an exact
It's
It's on Ashland.
It's on
Ashland,
Ashland,
south.
yeah.
It's like
It's about
the 4000 block.
Okay.
4100 block, yeah, South Ashland,
okay.
yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit before the show today, but Carrie, do you ever witness any what you would consider cruel? Obviously, the entire thing is cruel, but like specific injuries to animals, or maybe diseased animals, or clear violations of the law?
Right. We do. It just really depends on the day that we go there. So far, unfortunately, we've seen 2 souls that were passed away before we arrived.
They're dead in the
One
truck.
was a pig and one was a goat. And that was like really sad. I guess on a positive note, not that it's positive, they didn't get to experience the horrors they would be going through, but the others on the truck were definitely trying to comfort them. So it was very sad. It reminded me of when, each of my parents had passed away, or other friends or loved ones had passed away. They were definitely grieving. We saw that. A lot of the animals have injuries, like scratches. It can either be from, the long trip. Dynamic surfaces are not stable, so they might be falling against the sides of the truck.
Yeah.
Like the metal or the steel, whatever the consistency of the truck is. Scratches, it can also be from maybe they had harsh treatment, trying to get them from point A to point B.
Do you know where they're coming from when they're being trucked into this location on Ashland?
I don't know specifically the location.
But they
I
could be
believe they're
coming from
contract
Iowa
truckers.
or
Ohio license
Ohio,
plates as well.
Okay.
and are there specific, and if you don't know it at all, that's okay, but like specific laws regarding these animals? Like obviously a dead animal on a truck is probably a violation of Illinois law.
So it's very tricky because there are laws that, well, first of all, there are laws that protect animals, and of course most of those laws do not protect farmed animals. The most concrete law that we can point to is the 28-hour law, which requires that that animals on transport have at least one rest stop for food, water, and I guess rest of some sort during a 28-hour period. Now, judging on the basis of how thirsty and famished these animals are, and some of them are actually trembling when we arrive, and probably too weak to even drink the water or eat the food. But judging on the based on how thirsty a lot of these animals are, I mean, I suspect that some of them have not had any sustenance for 28 hours.
But even 28 hours, that is an absolutely ridiculous
It's an absolutely
law.
ridiculous
I
law.
mean,
yeah.
maybe 4 hours, But can you imagine not drinking water for even a full day? You can't even give them 24 hours. It has to be 28. That's nuts. But that is how animals used for food in big agriculture, they don't get protections. And of course, there's no way to prove whether they had water in the last 28 hours, which is one of the reasons that there are people like you giving them water, because when you arrive, these animals are very thirsty, right?
They are. A lot of times they're initially very scared as well.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they will stay farther back in the truck. But
They don't know who you are.
Exactly. But it's nice to see the progression. We bond with them. And I truly believe that they do feel our kindness. And they do drink the water, a lot of them. And we also sometimes will bring watermelon for them, and melon and banana. Watermelon especially is supposed to be really hydrating
That's probably
for them.
like the nicest thing they've ever had
Right.
in their life. What was I going to ask? Is there a reason why they don't give them water? Do we know beforehand?
Probably because they don't want mess. The more water you give somebody, there's going to be more urination, and if you feed them, there's going to be defecation. So they're trying to avoid that. Although when we look in the trucks, it's obviously not clean.
No.
They're basically lying in their own waste.
Yeah, but because they're deathly afraid.
Right. They're supposed to have straw, and I've never seen the straw, the height that it really should be to make them feel comfortable. It's very sparse,
is there a
if
law
any.
on that, like specifically that you know of?
There really isn't. I mean,
There's not a lot of laws. There's not a lot of protections for the farm animals in general.
There's something called the Animal Protection Act, but it's very hard to enforce. And so animals that are already sick, that are unable to stand unaided, who are blind, animals who have just had females that have just had babies over the last 48 hours. Technically, you're not supposed to transport those animals across state lines. And I believe also there are spatial requirements. So one of the things that we first noted was that these animals, especially the pigs, and this is predominantly, probably 75% of the animals that are on these trucks are pigs, and about 15% are sheep, and the other 10% are goats. Sometimes we actually see trucks that only have pigs. You see that they don't even have space really to stand up. They're lying on top of each other in some cases. And there are rules around that, but there's been almost no enforcement of those rules.
Well, I mean, if you heard what I was talking about before I brought you two on, talking about the law with the steer tailing, it's clear. And honestly, that same law, the Illinois Humane Care for Animals Act, would apply to these animals. So, I mean, that's something we can always talk about, but I would encourage you to, when you have footage of either dead animals or animals that are packed in there too tightly, animals with tumors, to alert Chicago's alders and the mayor, because, those are clear violations of the law. It takes a while to get people to care. I mean, as you know, with the horse carriage campaign, it took us a few years. We did it, but we proved the law was being broken each time. So on that note, who do you think is the alderperson for park packing?
Individuals can actually look it up. There's a site if you just Google.
But do you know
for your
offhand? Because
alderperson?
most people won't look it up.
I know, not off the top of my head actually, but if you do a search, you can find it.
Was it Lee that you sent to me?
I believe so.
This is a tricky practice too, because in order to to do what we're doing and to be able to come back and Carrie and I spend 2 hours each, a couple days a week with these animals.
Do you guys do it every week?
Yeah, we try to.
Sometimes multiple times.
Yeah.
And in order to be able to, and in many cases, when you have slaughter trucks, the trucks won't even stop for people. They'll just keep going. Or in a rare case, the tragic case of a woman who actually was run over by a slaughter truck and died, Reagan Russell, 4 or 5 years ago.
In Canada, right?
In Toronto.
Yeah.
And one thing that it's tricky for us to talk about these things because we've also formed a kind of bond of trust with the company and with some of the people who work there. And while we don't condone in any way any of the things that they're doing, it's necessary in order for us to be able to take the photos and do the videos that we're doing. And so there's a balancing act there. And the other thing is that the workers who in many situations are immigrants who don't have options for very many other kinds of employment. They're part of the exploitation system of exploitation of everyone in this industry. And so I just wanted to say that too. So there are definitely people to go after, but we're trying to be very careful around that.
Yeah, I communicated with a couple other Chicago animal advocates about this and urging them to reach out to aldermen. And I know it's a fine line because you don't want to cut ties with the people because you want to be able to continue to provide water and help the animals, but at the same time we want to shut it down. So I don't know what the answer is there.
Exactly. And every time we go there, we feel like we get more information too that can help us when we want to take a stronger action.
Well, I'm here to help with that in case.
Thank you.
And there's always speaking before city council. That's something that really helps is going to the public, their meetings and providing public comment. So, why? I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, but why do you guys help animals versus people or versus there's homeless and there's
I think we are helping people.
Yeah.
First of all, we think that helping animals is a way also of helping people or the earth for that matter. I think there was a famous line that was attributed to Theodore Adorno, the philosopher, that I don't know if it might be an apocryphal line, but that Auschwitz starts at an abattoir and the question, but they're only animals, right? And I think the way we think about it is that, compassion is compassion, love is love. When it comes to suffering, a dog is a pig, is a cow, is a boy. I mean, they're suffering the same kinds of ways and the same intensity.
Yep.
And whether we direct our love toward human or non-human animals or both, these forms of assistance need not be mutually exclusive. And in working toward animal liberation and working toward veganism and working toward emancipating animals from these sorts of slaughter trucks, we're also helping with the environment, right? I mean, the animal agriculture is responsible for about 22% of global carbon emissions. Mm-hmm. It's more responsible for global warming than the transportation sector is. It's responsible for environmental threats through habitat destruction, deforestation. When you look at the rate at which species are going extinct, I think it's 1 out of 1,000 species goes extinct every year. At that rate, in 692 years, I think 50% of the species on Earth will have disappeared. In 2,300 years, it's 90%. That's worse than the Permian extinction. That's 50 times worse than the greatest mass extinction in history.
Yeah, I actually had I think it was Gene Bauer, the founder of Farm Sanctuary, on. And he talked, I think it was him who talked about the ratio of wild animals in the wild compared to farmed animals. And there are hardly any wild animals left on Earth because we're taking all their habitat and then we're basically taking it for farming so we can raise more animals.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have read Homo Due by Harari, Yuval Harari. He has a very interesting. A lot of his stuff is not actually animal rights related, but it turns out that out of all if you look at all of the large animal biomass in the world, 70% of the large animal biomass in the world is factory farmed animal or farmed animals, livestock and farmed animals. 20% is humans, and 10% are wild animals.
Yeah. And these are animals locked in cages. They're not like living a free life. They're born into captivity. They're raised in cages. Raised isn't even the right word.
99.9% of chickens are factory farmed. 99% of pigs are factory farmed.
Yeah.
I think it's like 80% of cows are factory farmed. I mean, that's.
I think it's really important to remember, and I know I said this a little bit, but please, if you do eat animals, don't hang your hat on. Well, I know it came from a family farm. That's not true. It just isn't true. Even if you are going to that family farm. If you ever eat out at a restaurant, if you eat, fast food, those animals are not coming from family farms ever. No.
Right. Big agriculture is making it very difficult for the small family farms that we like to think animals are from to even exist.
Yeah.
The farmers are in debt just the way the system is set up, and they're sort of trapped. And even if they wanted to get out, it's hard to get out of that type of a situation. And so I'm glad that there's actually some animal groups that are actually trying to help them and help them convert their farms into plant-based, like mushroom farms and those type of situations.
And what you had mentioned about the aspect of a lot of undocumented workers in the big agriculture in America are treated horribly too. And they don't want to be doing that work. Nobody wants to do that work. And during COVID, I mean, I could do a whole show on that, which I'm thinking I should do a whole show on that. But like where they don't even allow them to go to the bathroom. They're wearing diapers on the assembly line while they're murdering animals because that's the only job they can get. So it's not right. That's not right either for them. So let me ask you, Carrie, what are the principles of the SAVE movement?
The SAVE movement, basically what we do is we take qualities that can be perceived as negative, like oppression and hate, and we counteract them with advocacy and love. And so basically we bear witness to the animals and we see their suffering, because that's important to see, what's actually going on. And then we also provide comfort to them with the water and sometimes the nourishing fruit that we bring to them. And we show them compassion, because sometimes they haven't had compassion in their whole life.
Don't you think that just making eye contact with them?
It's so important. If you look in their eyes, you see their souls and you see all the pain they've experienced.
And I think them looking at you, seeing your eyes, they finally see a little peace before their end.
Yeah.
I believe that. That is so true, in my opinion. Yeah. And basically, the whole vision of SAVE is to try to create an equitable, eco-friendly, vegan world for the animals, the planet, and for health.
Yeah.
And there's been studies done that plant-based diets do help your health. They can lower the risk of diseases like heart disease and diabetes.
Yep.
And
there is no cholesterol in plant food, in plants. Cholesterol comes from animals. So if you are fighting, your doctor's saying you have high cholesterol or you have, heart disease, that is coming from an animal-based diet. Yeah. And I'm not saying that, having a full vegan diet is going to shield you from all disease. That's not the case. You have to, obviously, take care of yourself and have an active lifestyle. But it's a good first step for sure.
Definitely. And also for the environment, too, which Joe also covered. Just industries that are not plant-based, all the byproducts they produce and everything that goes into the environment, into the oceans, the waste from the animals, and just in the digestion process of the animals, all the methane that goes into the atmosphere. That's not healthy for individuals at all, and it just devastates the environment, and it definitely contributes to all the chaos we have with the climate now.
Yeah.
So these are all good things that plant-based diets can definitely help.
And for anybody who disputes this and says, "Oh, well, humans are naturally mediating red blooded Americans," right? Well, at best, naturally we are omnivores. And, there's actually an argument that we're really more herbivores than we are even omnivores. I mean, so if you look at our nearest neighbors, the chimps or any of the great apes, I mean, they don't go around eating lots of meat. I mean, the percentages of meat that we eat, I think I read are 5 or 6 times what would be expected based on our what our species requirements would be or models would look like. So we're eating way more meat, and it's not what we're eating the meat; we're throwing out the meat.
Right, we don't need to, especially in this day and age. You know, we have so many other options,
and all the sayings, all the theoreticals. Well, what if you were on an island with a pig, and it's just you and the pig? What are you going to do? Well, you know what? Quit bringing up stupid, silly, theories that will probably never ever happen. And I probably would eat the grass, eat the leaves.
Right.
Yeah.
We're already
maybe
starting
finding food for the pig.
Exactly.
We would probably have a better time hanging out with that pig than the person asking that question. So,
we could have gone a full hour, but real quickly, because you guys each have 30 seconds. Is there an animal that sticks out in your mind?
There's so
30
many. There's a goat that I call Silver that had a silver chain around his or her neck. And just looking in that animal's eyes, I kept thinking of a companion animal that might have some kind of an accessory, around their neck. The 2 animals that passed away, Nirvana and Eden, the, goat and sheep, they were special.
And Joe?
Yeah, I mean, we have there was a pig that we called Freddie, and what was amazing about it was getting the animals to trust us. Trust that we're giving them something that's good as opposed to something that they've been used to their entire lives is such a huge thing. And this animal Freddie took a little while to kind of warm up to us, but then he started drinking the water, and he just drank and drank and drank and drank. He drank more than a gallon of water, and we had to keep refilling our water bottles. And then he would go back to the other side, and he'd kind of like motion to one of his friends, as one of his friends would come up to us too. And it's a beautiful thing. And if you ever have any doubt about the sociability, the intelligence of these animals, I mean, it's all right
it's hard
there.
To pick
it's all
one,
in there.
right?
Yeah.
So on that note, you guys, thank you so much for what you do. I really appreciate it. As I told you, I don't think I could do it, but I love that you are. And so thank you. And reach out to me if you want to know more about the Animal Save movement. And thank you very much to Showing Animals Respect and Kindness for sponsoring this important show. Please visit sharkonline.org to learn more about Shark's important work that sets that organization apart from most major animal rights organizations. And I will end today with this rather famous quote by Sir Paul McCartney. If slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be vegetarian. You can insert the word vegan there now that we know so much more about the horrific cruelty of the dairy and egg industry. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll tune in again next week.
The preceding program, If Cage Walls Could Talk, was sponsored by the Chicago Alliance for Animals.